Oh, hello, Brian. We're live now.
Hello.
Thank you for joining my podcast on such short notice.
Absolutely. And just as an intro on my end, hello everyone. Van Gale here. Today we're going to be on Sandra's podcast. Proceed.
Yeah. So this is Brian Sanzone. He is the president of my local Toastmasters club that I've been
What
part
you
of since last August. But Brian will tell you more about his Toastmasters journey, which has been a little bit longer than mine. And he also recently won our club contest to try to make it to the world champion, right, of public speaking.
Yeah, world champion of public speaking is the goal.
Yes, and very exciting. And our talk is going to be focused around the club winning speech that he just gave. Yeah. And I'll
Certainly.
let you introduce yourself now, Brian.
Okay. So as you all know now, my name is Brian Sanzone, or on my YouTube channel, Van Gale the Underdog. Masters started way back when I was in 2021 while I was in somewhat of a crossroads while I was working at Academy. And I was in a situation where I got really tired of sitting around waiting for things to happen in my life, because that
Ooh.
was along with I had been about 15 or so years dealing with depression, and just something out of nowhere, some might say God spoke to me that day, and
Mm-hmm.
I just decided I wanted to do something about it. I had already heard about Toastmasters before, so that was just a fortunate thing on my end that I had already known about them.
Mm-hmm.
Went ahead and looked up a club that was within my schedule range. Just so happened Monday nights, 7 p.m. was perfectly fine, because I would do my work at Academy would be 3:30 in the morning to 12 p.m. So I would
Wow.
have, yeah, I would have just enough time to go ahead and attend the meetings, although I'd have to like run right to bed, because my usual bedtime at that frame was like somewhere between 6:30 and 8 p.m. But I wanted to make sure I started doing something at that club plus two Toastmasters. The first day that I went, I was called upon for table topics. I guess I should go ahead and lay out how the function that day. That way people know a full
Yeah.
walkthrough.
And also, don't forget,
Yeah.
there's some people that don't know what Toastmasters is at all.
Yes. Yeah,
So
you're
you should
absolutely
go over.
right. So I'll go back a little bit, that way everybody knows what I'm talking about here. Toastmasters International, just to keep it simple, is a nonprofit organization with several thousand clubs all around the globe, where the general idea is to learn and teach effective communication, generally through
Yeah.
speeches. There are generally three segments in each club, although each club has its own unique features about it. But the three main categories, you have your prepared speeches, which are speeches that are prepared by designated individuals, usually about a week in advance. Sometimes you get a little more time than that are generally going to be 5 to 7 minutes in length, that you go ahead and provide to the group that day. After that is usually the table topics, which is impromptu, off the cuff speaking, where the table topics master, which is one of the roles there, has their own set of questions that they plan in advance, and they call upon somebody in the audience who they want to answer a question. And the third phase is evaluations, which I found to actually be probably the most important, because that has to do with giving feedback to a designated speaker.
Yeah.
So, in the idea of that, is being able to give feedback sounds like it might be easy at first, but it's actually a lot more difficult than you think, because when you're
Yes.
giving feedback, you want to make sure that it's done in a way that's constructive. And that can be hard to do sometimes, because it's about feeling out the recipient, which is why usually a
Yeah.
new Toastmaster who speaks will get someone who's an experienced Toastmaster to evaluate them, and vice versa. For when a veteran Toastmaster has spoken, a newer Toastmaster will usually be an evaluator for a veteran Toastmaster. That way, if they come off blunt or whatever means, because they're new to evaluation, so they they might offend someone. Therefore, it makes sense for a veteran Toastmaster because they can take the hits.
Yeah, yeah. No, that is a really good summary of Toastmasters for people who are not familiar with it. I remember for years, I kind of had heard about it mostly through different workplaces, but I never really explored it that much. And like you mentioned, I think the worst part I feared was getting the evaluations.
Yeah, absolutely. So continuing on, because I had to go on that tangent to explain Toastmasters, by joining them, the first day I went, I was called upon for a table topics question. I went ahead and gave my answer, and me being a person who came from a relatively depressing, not supportive background,
Mhm.
by default, I felt like I looked like an idiot at first, but just the applause you get when I have not really experienced that in my life before, it
Mm.
opened my eyes and had a light bulb, an absolute glorious feeling in that moment that just made me want to stay and stick with it, which was even further enhanced after my very first prepared speech because I felt even worse about the prepared speeches because I'm not the best when it comes to preparing things. I had been
Mhm.
more experienced with a little on the off the cuff one of the short speeches. So I gave my prepared speech on that day, and similar case where I felt like I messed up because I had an experience in life of being reprimanded for things that I probably shouldn't be just because of the I guess the old way of hey you have to have absolute perfection and all this nonsense then because I knew that I had skipped some content from what I had originally planned but after I had finished and had felt kind of down in the moment, that was immediately remedied by that sudden applause, a job well done. And it just completely changed my world for the better. Yep.
Wow. And I didn't realize that Toastmasters also was part of your journey about depression. And that's kind of what
Yeah, that was like the
was
big
is a
turning point in
source and
my life for that.
inspiration for your speech. Yeah.
Yeah, because I had already, before I joined Toastmasters, I was feeling the waters, but as I was listening to like Jordan Peterson podcasts and speeches,
Hmm.
because I guess they popped up on me. You know how YouTube breeds minds and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
But hey, you seem like you need some help. I
Hmm.
started listening to those, and then I think after that is when I decided to go ahead and try my chances at something. That something just happened to be Toastmasters because I figured communication that can literally take you anywhere. I know a group, kind of, sort of, so I picked one that my family was not part of. That way I got the full genuine experience of learning and being a Toastmaster instead of potentially being babied into it.
Yeah. What do you think inspired you from what Jordan Peterson said? Was it just about taking more action in your life or
Yeah, a
agency?
combination of that, taking responsibility for
Uh,
what's going on in your life is like the general notion of if things are not going your way in life, you have to do something about it. Don't just sit there and complain or do nothing about it. Of course, complaining is worse than doing nothing, but in
yeah.
some cases, yeah, it's like if you want things to change, you have to change. And it's as hard as it can be. Sometimes it's tedious, but it's a necessity if one wants to get what it is that they feel they deserve, want, etc. If you want things better for yourself and others in life, you have to change as such.
Okay. And tell us a little bit more about your speech, the content of it, the Four Pillars of Sanity. I think it's a very
Certainly.
intriguing title that you picked.
Yes.
And I've heard a few iterations of it, but of course, our audience
Yeah.
hasn't.
Yeah. For the sake of my channel, I'm going to go ahead and preface I have done a video on it, but it was called the Three Pillars at the time. So I don't know if you remember
Hmm.
me mentioning that within the speech. So this is an opportunity for if anyone who happens to watch my channel. Here's a catch-up point. Is it's updated to four pillars now because there is a fourth pillar that I discovered because while I was thinking about how it is to deal with remedy depression, however the case may be that people want to view it, and I was doing a little trial and error of sorts in my own mind, because one of the things I commonly hear in the communities where there's a lot of people who struggle with depression is, why am I depressed? And I
Uh-huh.
come to find that's not the question to ask. This is what led me to coming up with the four pillars. The question is actually on another foot, where it's about asking, why is it that I'm not depressed when I'm doing X? And those happen to
Uh-huh.
be what were the four pillars. It's like when I have a purpose, pillar one, a sense of purpose that assists in dealing with depression. But like how I mentioned in the speech, it's not about following one pillar. You have to have all four legs standing and steady, because if you have any of those legs wobbling or not even there, the thing that the pillars are holding fall down. So you're having to follow all four of the pillars, the four safeguards. Second one is progress. Third one is power. And then the fourth one, because the first three that were taking me well for a while, but then depression was still kicking every now and then. And I wonder, okay, what is it that I have to do? And
Mhm.
then I had to look here and there, and the times when I'm not depressed and the times when I am, and the ones that I'm not generally follow what the fourth one is, which is peers. So I can go ahead and revisit each of these real quick. That way I can give in detail what each of these basically mean. So going back,
Yeah, yeah, go ahead. And I'm also
yeah,
curious, how does one become aware that they are depressed? Because there had to be a certain point
yeah,
where
it's
you have
not
to have
easy.
some self-awareness, right? Because if maybe you're so used to being in that steady state for so long,
Yeah,
you might not even know sometimes,
yeah.
right?
A similar case I would say goes to, actually probably even harder to find, is like a person who's abused, even more so, because a person who truly is abused or oppressed in its absolute sense doesn't even think they are.
Right.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Because if a person is truly oppressed, their body tendencies, they're going to adapt their feelings to think of that as normal. And now that that has been conditioned in their mind that it is normal for that, they don't think they're oppressed or
Hmm.
abused or whatever, which is, I can easily see why. Have you seen news, or maybe you've heard from some people who have been in what's clearly, when you're looking into it, an abusive relationship of some kind, and they're like, no, I feel fine. It's like,
Yeah.
the power of conditioning is immaculate in how much a person can be conditioned in a certain way. I believe there's literally no limits to what a person can be conditioned to think as normal. Those go
Yeah,
pretty
yeah. So
extreme.
so I was thinking like maybe over the 15-year time period, you might have not realized, right?
Yeah.
Or you got so used to it. It was just your
Yes.
normal de facto, you're just used to feeling a
Mindset.
certain way. So how does one kind of like, I don't know, rise above themselves or kind of like have this outside perspective where it's like, oh, this is not really the best way to go through life.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Let's go ahead and I'm gonna think about on that real quick.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, yeah, you reflect on that. But yeah, go ahead and take us through
Because
the
I
four
know a lot
pillars
of
that you had.
people who they do struggle with depression, and let's see, because yeah, that's a really hard one, because most of the time when I do hear someone is struggling with depression, they're usually aware of it to an extent, but they don't know how to go about dealing with it.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
is the method that I've encountered more often in people. I've never really encountered someone who is clearly depressed and isn't aware of it. That's
Hmm.
probably a little bit more rare. But I'll go ahead and do like what Warren has suggested, do like a little pivot and talk about something adjacent, where people who I do find struggle with depression but don't know how to assess it, I think is the more common issue. And it can be very difficult, because a lot of times I feel like depression is from so many different factors all cluttered
Hmm.
together. And it is difficult to deal with that, because think about, let's say, when somebody who doesn't have the best work ethic, and maybe they have a million dishes in the sink, and all their clothes are piled up in the hamper, nothing seems to be getting done.
Yeah.
The obvious answer is, oh, get them done, but they don't know where to start. And it's like that sense of being overwhelmed by a whole bunch of things at once. And the hard part is picking one part and starting there. It doesn't matter which one. You pick
Mhm.
one point you want to work on that you are most confident, or at least unconfident about, to deal with, because it's about getting that first foot in the door of doing something, getting started. because when you're climbing a staircase, it's not about jumping to the top. You have to start small at the beginning and work your way up. So it's about finding and pointing out one of these things. So in the case of, let's say, somebody who's being bullied at work, they feel like they're not getting anywhere in the work environment. Maybe they have all their dishes are a mess in the home environment. There's a lot of disarray going on there. And trying to make sure to tell yourself that I need to do something. And that's even harder because when you're in that depressed mindset, you literally don't want to do anything. You have no energy to
Okay.
do anything. But the difficult thing there, again, is to tell yourself in some fashion, usually through distracting yourself for a moment by like going to Toastmasters. There you go.
Mhm.
Going to some environment where you can get your mind off of what is plaguing you. That way you can fuel yourself the energy you need to start somewhere, starting somewhere. So in the case of the person I'm saying who's like stuck in a dead end job, they're bullied at work and they have a mess at home,
Mhm.
that you try to go find some group to hang out in, or just whatever they consider to be their sanctuary, whether it's a long walk in the park, just sitting in the park, going to a theme park, I don't know, something that someone finds that takes their mind off of things in a positive way. That way they can reset their brain to think and try to tackle these, not these issues, but at least just one issue. So maybe they go home later and they wash one dish, just one,
Mhm.
just enough that you feel you can do. Because if you say, I'm going to do all of these when you're in a depressed mindset, guess what? You're not getting any of it done. You want to make
Mm.
sure to keep your standards low in the beginning, your goals low. That way they're enough so that you know you can do it. Because once you do that one, you've already gotten the train going to where you're going to start wanting to do a little more. It's kind of like
Mhm.
my same advice for people who want to start working out. It's like, oh, I don't want to do a hundred push-ups a day and run 3 miles a day. No, you don't do that. You do one push-up, walk
Mhm.
around your block. I think that's a little more realistic getting started. It's like, yeah, it's not the 100 and the 3 miles that you want, but it's enough that you can do to get started. And then you eventually get to a point in your mind like, I can do more. I'm doing so well right now with this routine. I can add a little more, put a little more on your plate. It's the same in the opposite realm. Like when you hear
Mhm.
people who talk negatively, how that's infectious to an accelerating level. Because it goes, like I said, in the opposite direction as well, where if someone is having a really good time, has really good habits, they stop doing that one habit, then they stop doing another, and so on and so forth, maintaining the habits that you want to have. That way you can
Mm.
make sure to reach the goals that you want to have.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. I agree. It's sometimes just taking that first small step, the littlest
Yeah.
thing you can do so you can feel like you achieve something.
Yeah, just enough to make yourself feel better about yourself, and then making sure to retain those habits. Because once you stop, if you don't make a routine out of it, that depression is going to come back. It's making the routine that way. As you build those habits, those are going to be safeguards against depression. Because now, let's say for the sake of the dishes, you did
Mhm.
that one dish at a time, you're eventually going to get them done. And then once you get them done, you make sure you keep the habit of washing the dishes as they come in a routine fashion. That way they don't get piled up again. Because if you let them get piled up again, guess what? That depression's coming back.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's really
like
good.
yeah, I find like a lot of times depression has to do with reworking habits, and it's like a combination of all these, not just habits, but conditionings from environments. Because,
Mhm.
people, a lot of times they come from maybe abusive households. Maybe they didn't have parents for all we know. Maybe they had one parent. Maybe they just come from a really not so great neighborhood, and that's going to plague someone.
Okay, well, yeah, if you could take us through
It's
the
hard to
four
do.
pillars that you had that you kind of discovered yourself through experience, right?
Yes.
And based on your personal story about how to ward off depression.
Yes, that's why. Because like it doesn't make it sound easy when I talk about it, because
Yeah.
a lot of it has to do with having to communicate with people. That's why I want to be a therapist, I guess you could say, even though I don't have a degree. It's just simply listening to someone, and then I give them some ideas of something they could try. It's just
Hmm.
communication helps. It's just sometimes, like, especially people from a depressing background, they don't want to, because if they ask what they need help with, a lot of times they, oh, you got to change your life for the better. That doesn't help anybody if they just say that. Because
Yeah.
there's a lot of people from backgrounds where there's a lot of they're given outputs as opposed to inputs on how to take care of their problems. They're not given a roadmap. They're just said, "Hey, deal with it." It doesn't help anybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. So,
yeah,
go ahead and tell us a little
yeah, a
bit
lot
more
of
about
the
the pillars.
people, they come from those backgrounds where there's just nobody constructive in their life. Thus, they don't want to seek help because they have the
Mhm.
experience. If they seek help, they're just going to get put down, or maybe they're going to be told that they're lazy.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. It's
Yes.
good that you're giving people tactical advice and it's based off your personal experience and story.
Right, because that fourth pillar was a lot more important than I thought it was initially. Finding the community that gives you the feeling that you are in a sanctuary is an absolute necessity, because there, like I was saying, there's a lot of people who don't have that. And I was very fortunate to find that in Toastmasters. Otherwise, who knows what would have happened to me.
Yeah, yeah. So, how do you think it's kind of changed your life learning all that? Because obviously you're passionate about it, where you want to give a speech and you're entering it into a competition.
Yeah, the whole point of that is I want to be able to help as many people as I can with these little tools that I'm giving them, because most people, they don't have someone to give them some kind of insight. It's really as simple as that. Is I want to be sure to give the word out that you matter. There's something you can do about it. You're not lost. There's not anything wrong with you. What you are is normal. You just don't know it. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, yeah, that's really
There's,
good.
there's no one who is broken.
So, what's your goals with how far do you want to get in the speaking competition?
Can you rephrase the question?
What's your goals with entering the speaking competition?
Just to make sure to get the message out is my main goal with that. Because if I can just help one person, that's all I need. And the higher I go, the more people that get to hear it, the higher the chance I can help at least one person, preferably more people. Because
Yeah.
even if they don't know what to do, like if I set the seed of construction, and if they get back with me on if they have questions on how they can approach, I'm more than happy to help, because not everyone knows where to start. Similar to what I was mentioning earlier, there's a lot of
Hmm.
issues that usually come up that work together that cause that depression, and trying to snuff out where to begin is the hard part. But once you do, then you can start getting it taken care of.
Yeah. So, tell us about what you're doing right now with your. I know you have a YouTube channel, and what else is going on in your life and in the future?
Okay, yeah. So that kind of goes from where I left off with the Toastmasters when I was in the middle of academy. Because
Hmm.
later, in while I was working at academy, and I think it was 2022, in around it was May or so. There were many times in that year of 2022, between 2022 and late 2021, when I was being ridiculously overworked there, to the point where I was in the hospital more times than I would like. It's how I phrase
Mm.
it all the time. And I decided this is a little ridiculous, because what was even worse, I made sure to make an HR report, which you'd think that would be the go-to decision if no one's making the proper changes, right? HR threw me under the bus and told the company who made the report that my boss at the time was not happy about that. And his response was to tell me I should not have my job because I'm not getting the work done in time. This was after coming back from the hospital about a week ago. And since then, a few
Mm.
weeks after that, I put in my 2 weeks, and good old surprise Pikachu face was on their faces. If you know that meme,
Wow.
but
So
that luckily took me to a much happier environment, because while they were like, "Oh, do you have a job lined up?" No. Well, you should. I'm getting out of here. This is unacceptable. And then within less than a month, as I had planned, I said, I'm going to get a job in a month, which I did. and that was the best job I had in Holiday Inn Express as a janitor.
Huh?
The only issue was I just wasn't earning enough. I couldn't get a raise nor an advancement, so I took a gamble to try to find a new job. I found one at the time, but I had already put to rest my job at Holiday Inn Express, so I was stuck for a little bit, but that type of job didn't work out, so I left that so I could have time to find another job. So here we are, keeping the wheels turning. From this was started in August 2024, and here we are now.
Yeah. What do you think you learned most from that situation at Academy?
The biggest takeaway is because I had, you remember earlier when I mentioned when a person doesn't know if they're oppressed or abused when they truly are? That was me, I would say, because it took me getting put in the hospital to know that I was being abused,
Mm.
because in that time, because I was conditioned to think that I'm just supposed to work harder, and then I think, oh, I'm just not pushing myself hard enough. No, I was pushing myself too much. And it only took some time where my body just gave up on itself multiple times, which is why I ended up in the hospital, being overworked when I was fed the ideas, oh, you're not working hard enough because you're not getting work done.
Mm.
No, being worked too much so I can't do the work as effectively is the more proper answer.
Oh, I
Because
see.
if there was an interesting character who he quoted someone about, if you're giving 100% all the time, you're gonna wear out. If you're
Okay.
doing like 70% or some smaller percent all the time, you will consistently do exceptional, not like the best possible work, but you'll be consistently good at giving out good work while growing in the process, as opposed to
Mhm.
always giving 100% and steadily doing worse over time to the point where you're gonna crash. And it took
Okay.
that lesson of ending up in the hospital multiple times for me to finally wake up about that.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you think improving your communication skills has served you in this journey of, changing jobs and all that? Did it give you more confidence, or maybe just you could speak up a bit more at
Yes.
work?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Because I never had a lot of interviews back then when I was in Academy, because Academy was, I think it was my third job at the time. So I didn't actually
Oh,
have to go through a lot of interviews. Thus, I
third job
wasn't
of
really
your
that
life?
person who is afraid of interviews. But what it did, in
Okay.
fact, do was it made it easier for me to handle interviews. It impresses almost every person that interviews me. And in addition to that, there are a couple times when someone wants, like, there's a speech in like a little gathering.
Uh-huh.
The example I'll give is when I was working at well, not working, but volunteering for a community center in the end in on Sylvania Avenue. There, they had a holiday party, and while they were waiting for the food to finish, which took a little longer than they expected, the speaker in the front had already given out all the information they needed. So they were seeing who just wanted to talk. There were a couple people who made their little talks, and then still we were waiting for the food. And I was like, go up and give a little speech of some kind. What got me here? It was about, I'd say, about our usual like 5 to 7 or so that we do at Toastmasters. And they really liked it, just like that moment. Because the point of your question was how I saw that growth was, if I did that before Toastmasters, I wouldn't have.
Right.
I would have
Right.
been terrified to do that. But I went up there and my legs were a little bit shaking, but not that much. But my speech came out very smoothly since I had done it for so long.
Oh, well, that's a cool story where you had an opportunity
Yeah,
and
with a
speaking
completely
really
different
paid off
audience.
in addition to the interviews, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Mhm.
Well, let's see. Do you have anything else you would like to share with us? Do you have some other interest or anything you'd like to share with us? I know you mostly from Toastmasters and the speaking and all
Yes.
that.
Yeah, since you're trying to wrap up, right? Yeah. I didn't get to clarify to the audience what each of the pillars is in a
Oh, yeah,
detailed
yeah. If you want
sense.
to go do that,
So I
yeah.
do want to make sure they at least get that tidbit, because I know they're going to see that in comments. Starting from the beginning, purpose. Purpose just think of that as your general long-term goal. Usually you want that to be something vague, that way that you can't actually obtain it. My example for me is I want to make every person the best version of themselves. That's something that you can't measure because it's something that is forever growing.
Uh-huh.
Thus, it is something that is in that vague department. Because if you set something that is attainable, let's say someone wants to become president of the United States, they get that goal, and yeah, it'll take some time. But if they get that goal, if they're in like their 50s or 60s, it's like, what do they do then? They got to something else, which is why you want to make sure to set that purpose goal to be something that's vague, something that you can't physically obtain, at least in a lifetime, or technically can't obtain in the case I was talking about, something that can't be measured. The second pillar, progress, that goes in tandem with the purpose because you want to have something that's routinely going to get you that purpose. As if you just say, I want to become, in the easy example of, I want to become president of the United States, but you're not taking steps, routine steps to get there, that's just a wish. That's not a goal, that's a wish, because if you're not taking the steps necessary to get to that goal, then that wish is not going to come true. Thus, the tandem nature of having the progress of giving yourself some kind of routine process to get to that. I guess in the case of someone who wants to be president of the United States, they want to at least get their network going, whatever the case may be. I don't know a lot of people in that
Mhm.
the government department, but in the case of whatever your purpose is, you want to make sure to give yourself some kind of routine goals. I suppose the easier one would be, let's say you want to become more in shape, just like
Mhm.
as an easier goal to achieve that makes more sense for more people. Okay, maybe you go on a walk every day. You give yourself something that you're going to routinely do to achieve that goal that you want. That
Mhm.
way you can actually achieve that goal and it's not just a wish. The third pillar is power. And when I say power, I mainly just mean control, especially over yourself, because a person, the common example being someone who feels like they're in a dead end job, they don't have any power. They're going to feel
Mhm.
depressed, most likely. They're going to be have maybe struggle with anxiety, different kinds of mental plagues of different varying kinds. And this was probably one of the harder ones to do, especially these days, because getting some kind of power has to do with putting yourself in some environment where you're going to feel at least somewhat powerful.
Yeah.
Maybe, like, let's say you're doing artwork. That's a sense of power. You're creating something. You're physically creating something, whether it's
Mhm.
drawing, sculpting, maybe you're doing even like the like digital artwork. Anything that allows you to feel like you are in control, that's going to be now I you got to be careful with this because sometimes that means for people to
Mhm.
be acting like a bully because yeah, that'll make you feel powerful, but it's not the right way to do it. It's to set you up for failure in the long run. So you want
Yeah.
to especially make sure that it's something constructive, especially if it has nothing to do with individuals. For some people, like I was saying, art, those are easier to gauge because it's kind of hard to bully a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no loss there, no risk there when trying to get the sense of power through doing artwork, your household chores. Just the sense of a job well done is going to make you feel powerful. And
Yeah.
the third. I
Fourth.
already said the third,
Yeah.
power. The fourth one that I discovered later, peers, probably the most important one. Having a sense of community around you, constructive people that are going to build you up and people that you are also going to build. That way, you have a self fulfilling prophecy that you and the people around you are going to build yourselves. None of this, because there are no self made
Mhm.
millionaires, there's no self made anything. Everything, we are social creatures, and making sure that you find a community or even multiple communities, you can join multiples. That'll actually help you probably even better, is to give yourself some kind of community, whether it's a book club, a Toastmasters club,
Mhm.
or maybe your YouTube channel, or any kind of place where you are a member of that's going to construct you into a better you, as well as helping other people be better versions of themselves.
Yeah. How have you found some of your community and people that you want to be around that are like-minded and all that.
Yeah, the Toastmasters was definitely the thing that opened my eyes on that. And it just took a couple years for it to sink in that having a community is what is necessary. That fourth pillar, that fourth safeguard. Sorry, I
Yeah.
forgot the question in that moment.
Oh, just how have you found community? Like where, like, is it the store? Is it from school? Is it, I think that a lot of people struggle with how do I
Yeah.
have a sense of community with people or make new friends. It's especially harder when you're an adult.
Oh, yeah. That's a very good question because it's not easy to find. It's more a matter of telling yourself and convincing yourself that I need to find a group if you don't have a group, because not everyone has a constructive family. There are
Hmm.
a lot of people who come from kind of deprecating families that make you feel bad or whatever the case may be, where you don't feel like you are a person. You feel like you're an object. And because the default you'd hope would be someone's family is their sense of community, but not everyone has that. As
Hmm.
such, it's up to them to try to find some group, usually through one of their hobbies is probably the easiest way. Like, let's say I went down further the road, if I was still playing Magic the Gathering, there are communities for that. If you go and look, you'll find a community for just about anything, whether, like I was saying, like book club or arts groups, some kind of club. I One of the traps I can also see for some people is some people will view it as, why should I do work for free? Because some people might view some of those groups as doing extra work, like volunteer work.
Yes.
I think is a very good example because I didn't know how valuable it is to just do volunteer work like I did for the community center. Because, like I was alluding to, a lot of people, I think, why should I do work for free? And this usually comes from people who haven't attempted it, because similar to what I was saying with the question of why am I depressed, this is about rephrasing the question in a different light and saying to the person, why is it you don't want to get experience for free?
Yeah.
That kind of
Yeah.
click there.
Yeah. Or even, there are a lot of people who don't value
Why do I
just,
want to get friends for free?
yeah. Yeah. I was going to say that too.
Why
It's not
don't I
always
want? Why is
volunteered.
it that
People
I
don't want
don't
to.
want to build a network for free?
Yeah, yeah, they don't see that. But I think it's when people have a transactional nature, they need to get
Yep,
something out of everything.
yep.
So they're looking at it as, if I
Something
hang out with
material
you, what will I get
specifically.
out of this? Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, well, that's great. Yeah. Hopefully that gives people some advice about how they can go find some people around
yeah,
them and seek out community. I think it's really
yeah.
important
And
also.
yeah, it is something to be mindful. I do want to preface to everybody that not all communities are equal. There are some communities that are, we'll say communities in quotes, because there are some communities that are more destructive in nature, where it's more of they use you as a tool. And you don't
Hmm.
want a community that's going to beat you down or make it taboo for you to try anything else. You want to make sure the community is building you and not using you. And that's very difficult to do sometimes.
Yeah, that's very,
It's
very
not easy
true.
to snuff that out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your YouTube channel? Because you finally told me about it yesterday, and excited to see. I didn't explore all the videos on there, what you do, but you
Yeah.
mentioned a version of your speeches on there. So, what else do you plan to do with that?
Yeah. So the reason I originally made that was I just wanted to make sure to give the word out of my view on different things. Is, while the argument may be, oh, maybe I don't know everything, but maybe my point of view on a specific topic is going to bring to light to somebody else how something might be easier to deal with in life. Because if we all follow the same trends that we always do and we don't get different perspectives on different things, when everybody learns differently, then some people aren't going to learn in a certain way. So what I have to bring to the table might be said in a way or translated in a way that is easier for somebody to
Mhm.
receive than the norm. So there's
Okay.
a particular, what was it? So I know there was a quote that I've heard for the longest time. It'll come back to me in a bit. You can
Okay.
continue.
But just to give people an idea, like what type of topics are you talking about on there?
Yeah, that's a good question. Usually just like topics that a lot of people don't think of off the top of their head. I'm just gonna go
Mhm.
ahead and open it real quick because I
Oh
like
no,
to
you don't have to
talk
be like
about things that
so
people don't
specific.
really talk about too much, or in some cases we overthink on certain topics, and those are ones that I'll visit. But for the most part, lately, it's taken a backseat to me just trying to find a stable job. Although I want to try to make sure to get back in the habit of doing this more regularly.
Yeah, I also think being on YouTube making videos, it enhances your public speaking and communication.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Like one I did was called "Why Does Depression Exist?" Because who's asked that question before? And I had, let's see, the price of paradise while you're disrespecting yourself by eating garbage, like different things we just do and don't think about, and exploring topics like that. That way we can
Okay.
break down what it is we do on a regular basis and seeing what it's doing well for us or what it's actually doing poorly for us,
And
as
I'm
well
just
as like podcasts like these. That way I can bring to light in a more detailed manner, doing a little back and forth on different topics as well.
yeah. So what motivated you to start the YouTube originally? I'm just curious.
Yeah, let's see. I think that just had to do with wanting to make sure to tell somebody, but not knowing where to start. So I was like, hey, let's just put it on YouTube. Someone will hear it.
Okay.
Hopefully, it's like just shouting into a void. Hopefully, someone will hear it, and hopefully, it'll go around the world and be spread in some fashion.
Yeah. I hope that encourages some people to just, if they have an idea about things they want to talk about, why not just put it on the internet?
Yep.
I mean, not everything, but
Yeah.
just, you can start, anybody can start a YouTube channel. It's a
Hmm.
good way to give clarity to your thoughts and to teach a little bit on there and talk about the how and why of things.
Precisely.
Yeah. 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 But I really like that journey. I think it's fun and it helps you learn to speak more eloquently, right? And to actually condense your thoughts down and to
Oh yeah,
not
yeah.
repeat yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, even better that I would suggest for people is if there's a topic that you're pondering, writing it down in a detailed fashion will really help you organize your thoughts on something like that. I did that to begin with,
Hmm.
which helped a lot in terms of getting out the proper details. That way I could actually form them later into stories as well as different examples that people can relate with more. Like I know one combination of examples I would do on some of the videos would use video game examples because I know
Hmm.
there's a lot of patterns if you look at a competitive side of any game. Like let's say you're looking at competitive card games, you're looking at esports, I think they still call it. The patterns of success in the competitive level of games also applies, I believe, to the patterns of success in what we call the real world success.
Yeah. Yeah.
Developing that discipline, all those constructive habits that you want to build towards those goals. Same patterns.
Yeah, that's really good because I think it's important that people maybe not rely on motivation, right? Or how they feel about something, but it's just being habitual in doing
Yeah,
these good
that's the
things.
best lesson I've learned is forming the habits that are going to put you in the right direction, and even more so eliminating habits that are self-destructive.
Yeah.
That's probably even more important. Like as seemingly pointless as it is to not push your chair in, to not close the door all the way, to not close the drawers all the way, as meaningless or mundane as some habits seem, they're a lot more constructive than you think.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that leaves us on a good note for this conversation. Is there any last thing you want to share with anyone?
And specifically, it's just like you can view each of our YouTube channels at your as you see fit. If you liked anything about what we talked about, feel free to look up the good old Van Gale the Underdog.
Yes. And Brian also got on LinkedIn.
That I did.
Yeah. So he's also reachable
Still
on
playing around
LinkedIn.
with that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you will enjoy it. I think that's another way to gain community, like you're talking about. You
Yep,
have
community.
this online virtual community through
Yes.
LinkedIn that could be really
Oh, yeah.
positive. So, yeah, he's reachable over there. But thank you so much for this conversation.
Certainly. And I
Yeah,
hope
and
everyone
good luck on
took
your
something away
speech.
today.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how far you get in the Toastmasters speaking competition.
Yeah, likewise. I make sure to
Yeah.
go as far as I can, preferably all the way. That way I can get the word out to the most possible amount of people.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I love that mission you have behind it because it doesn't seem like it's like a self-centered goal. It's not like I want to be the international like world champion of speaking. It's like you have more of a mission to get your message out there than anything else. Yeah.
I'm just the messenger. It's going as
Okay.
far as I can make it.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Wait.
Y'all have a good one.